Second June meeting of the Concord Zoning Board of Adjustment. We will, for the most part, follow our usual procedure this evening, which is to say we will call the cases in the order in which they appear in the agenda. We will ask the appellant to step forward, be sworn in, and be seated in the chairs to my right. We will then ask them to provide us with whatever information they would like us to have. We ask them to confine their testimony, if at all possible, to 10 minutes. We'll then ask the appellant to step down, and we'll solicit testimony from anyone in the audience who wishes to be heard in favor of the appeal, or anyone in the audience who wishes to be heard in opposition to it. We ask that those people confine their testimony, if at all possible, to 5 minutes. Following that, we will check in with code enforcement to see if there is any commentary from their office. And then, if any information has been offered that seems to bear factual clarification, the appellant will have the opportunity to provide that clarification, not new arguments, prior to our closing the public testimony portion of the hearing. Under most circumstances, the board will act on each case as we hear it and then move on to the next. We have a couple of items to bring to your attention. One is that in the case of case 0053 2023 90 Sanborn Road, Open Space Residential District, I will be recusing myself from that case, which means that there will be only a 4-member board for that case. If the crosses wish to be heard by a 5-member board, they have a right to be heard, but they won't be heard tonight. If they are heard by a 4-member board, it will require 3 votes for a motion to carry, either for or against. And the fact that they have been heard by a 4-member board does not constitute a cause for a request for rehearing. Mr. and Mrs. Cross, are you all right with the 4-member board?
Yes, I guess so, sure.
Okay, very good. The first case we will hear this evening.
And the first case is also going to have a 4-member board. So if
Right.
That's a problem.
So I will check in with also the people from the Hooper Family Trust. Are you here?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you willing to be heard by a 4-member board, having heard my sermon?
Sure.
Very good, thank you. The first case this evening is case 0052 2023 75 West Parish Road, RO Open Space Residential District. Hooper Family Trust of 2020 is the owner. The owner seeks an equitable waiver for a swimming pool and associated improvements that do not meet the standards of Article 2841D. Owner seeks the following: a rear lot setback of 0 feet where 50 feet is required, and a side lot setback of 25 feet where 40 feet is required. Would you come on up?
Here or here?
Right over there. Swear to tell the truth?
Right. Yes.
The guy behind you doesn't have to swear to tell the truth, just you. Great. Would you please have a seat and identify yourself for the record as you testify?
Sure. Michael Hooper.
And as you know, there are special criteria for an equitable waiver which are different from variance or a special exception. Would you like to run through why you believe you meet those criteria?
Sure. I think I meet the criteria for the equitable waiver versus the variance because the problem has existed for more than 10 years and the city has not done anything to make any corrections to it. So, do you want all the details now or just the?
Well, we have read your app. Why don't I see if the board has any questions? Any questions from the board?
No, just to review, the pool was built in 2001, but you moved in 2013, is that correct?
Yes.
And there was no indication by the selling agent or anyone that there might be a suggestion it did not meet the criteria, that the setbacks weren't met at the time?
There was not. No, and there was nothing in the disclosure from the property listing when we first went to look at the house and when we went through the process of purchasing the home.
Was the previous owner done?
She was the owner prior to the previous
Prior to
owners.
that.
Yep, so
Okay.
Par and Laura
I didn't
Gustafson.
put that together, but I knew 2
Yeah.
owners back.
Yep, so the previous owners were there for 2 years, and then April Dunn was there for 10 years
Prior to
before that.
yeah.
So she was the one who put the pool in. And hasn't been an issue at all with my neighbors, the abutting property owners. We've got Randy Dow here with me tonight. Speak on my behalf if needed. So, looking to actually sell our house in the very near future, and just wanted to make sure that it's not an issue for the new owners.
That was gonna be my next question, is was there a complaint of some kind or anything? So there wasn't no issue, you're just trying to clarify to make sure it's not a problem?
Correct. Yep, no issues. Again, Pat and Randy Dow were the neighbors who owned the property, and they sold to Dwight Frazier, who's recently done some clearing of the land, and he knew it was an issue. There hadn't been any problems about it.
Other questions from the board?
I'm recused.
Well, then you can't ask any questions. Ted, any questions?
There was a building permit issued for that pool?
Yes, yep. My understanding from the zoning office was that it was, or the permit office was, it was issued in 2001 and closed in 2005, which they found interesting, that it was open for such a long period of time.
Probably because nobody bothered to tell them they'd done the work.
So,
Any questions? Thank you very much.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Is there anyone who wishes to be heard in favor of this appeal? Please come forward.
Hello, my
Hello.
name is Randy Dow.
Swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth.
Yeah, I do.
Please have a seat. Would you mind stepping down, sir? Mr. Hooper?
Oh, sure.
Thanks.
Pardon me.
Okay, I was the previous owner of the property where the pool is going over the boundary. We actually bought the property, back in 2001. And honestly, I can't remember the pool being built then, or if it already was, but it wasn't going over my boundary at the time. I bought the piece of property behind me, which I did do a survey on, and the pool surround fence itself is 4 inches over the property on one little corner for about this distance. All right, so frankly, I talked to Mike about this when he bought the property. I talked to the previous owner, and I assured them that, I know it's over the boundary here. It's only 4 inches. We plan on not doing anything with this property anyway. It's not an issue, and I am certainly in favor of him getting a variance on this.
Thank you very
He was
much.
a victim of purchasing property that was never inspected, unfortunately. So,
Thank you very
all right,
much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
My name is Ron Christie.
You swear to tell the truth as well?
I do,
What would you like us to know?
just want to know that we live at 80 West Parish Road, and we totally support the petition to have whatever is necessary for Mike to have his way on this property. We're right across the street from, or diagonally across the street from his property, and we can see his pool. So, that's it.
Very good. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard in favor? Is there anyone who'd like to be heard in opposition? Any comments from code enforcement?
Nope, no city action was taken from the time it was built till now in terms of enforcement. There haven't been any issues, it's just cleaning the title.
Yeah.
Very good. With that, we'll declare the public testimony portion of the hearing closed. And I'll open it for discussion. Ted, how do you see this?
Well, I think that it meets the stated requirements in that it was not noticed until well after the violation had been completed. The property was essentially completed. There was some kind of a good faith error. It doesn't seem to constitute any kind of a nuisance based on the testimony. And I think I would move approval.
How do you look at it?
I would move for approval as well. I have a vague history of the property from, 20 years ago. I remember a shed had to be moved a couple of feet because that had been an issue at some point, but I don't remember this had ever been an issue when it was put in. I don't remember anything ever coming up with it, and that's all I really can remember from that long ago.
Okay.
So I think, yeah, it's just cleaning it up for him so he can sell it. It's unfortunate.
Nick?
I agree.
I agree as well. And I believe we have a motion
So moved.
to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? The vote is unanimous. The equitable waiver is granted. And the next case is 0053 2023 Sanborn Road, and Mr. Wallner will chair the meeting.
Thank you, sir. You can stay there if you want, I'll do it right here.
No, I don't want to.
You're all set. Good night.
Thank you. Next case before us is 0053 2023 90 Sanborn Road, RO Open Space Residential District, Jason Cross owner. Owner seeks a variance for a garage that will not meet the standards of Article 2841D. The proposed garage will be 10 feet from the side property line where 40 feet is required. Mr. Cross, come on up, please. Just want to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Please be seated. And what would you like us to know?
Okay. Well, thank you, folks, for your time. If you could pull up, yeah, we could start with this. So right there, what I've represented in green, that's our existing paved driveway, and the box that it would be the location of our proposed garage. We'd like to attach it to our existing garage. The existing garage is underbuilt, so we actually can't park our cars in it. It's not.
You hold on just for a
Sure.
second. Can we address the folks
Yep.
out in the hallway,
Yeah,
please?
I'll look at it.
Yep. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
Thank you. Please continue.
Sure. So we would like to be able to build a functional garage on our property where we could park, and we actually do park there now. Yeah, so it's a 10-foot setback in the front, but as you head towards the, in this direction, yeah, thank you. It increases the distance from the property line, so that's why in the proposal I put 10 to 15 feet. If you could go to the photo, you could see what our property looks like. So those are where we park our 3 cars now, my wife's, my personal truck, my company truck, and then that additional space is, would be that buffer. And it would allow, if we ever needed to get behind our property for any reason, there's more than enough room to traverse behind there. As you can see, there's no neighbors to our right, to our south. Obviously, you folks, the City of Concord Conservation Land, and then my neighbors directly behind me who are here tonight, and one other neighbor who she couldn't be here. She had to work late, but she was in favor of it. I mean, that's pretty much the extent of it. Never had a garage we could park in, and kind of as time goes on, I'd like to have one that we could, especially when we get into the winter seasons and that kind of stuff. Just, I think it would add, it obviously would add value to our property, but I think it certainly wouldn't diminish any of the value of the neighborhood. Aesthetically, it'd probably be more pleasing than just seeing 3 cars in the driveway now. But that's kind of was the extent of it.
You already, on your drawing, it shows you already have a garage there, is that correct?
So actually what you're looking at right there, the 3 window, that structure right there is our existing garage, which is more just storage, kids' toys, that kind of stuff. It's very narrow, so we can't actually park anything in it. Our vehicles are longer than the
2-car
garage.
garage?
That's a 3-car.
It is a 3-car.
Yep.
I know that you're proposing a 3-car, but the one that's there.
Yep, so what I'd like to do is just, basically build it perpendicular and attach it to that one. Probably eliminating one of the 3 bays, just, we're not taking up, try to still keep some lawn, but that was kind of the gist of it.
So you would end up having a 5-bay garage, basically?
Be 3 with
3?
2 for, really storage. We have shelves in there now for storing stuff. And
Why can't it go there?
so that area right there, I mean, it's all ledge, which is not obviously relevant to you folks, but it slopes up, it starts to slope up there, and that is that whole back area. It doesn't, may I point to it? This area right here is all our deck and patio area, so we wouldn't be able to, structurally, it wouldn't really tie together. We'd have to rip off the roof of the house, and, because that roof, you know, what,
The garage, which way does the garage roof go?
the garage roof pitches this way, which makes it easy. We can tie in nicely to that. So you just come up the driveway, you see 3 garage doors, drive in, back out, leave. We would need, we'd get somebody to draft up some plans so we, you know, had something nice to build, but that would essentially be the, just the.
What's the size of your proposed garage?
I drafted 36 by 36. Would probably be more like a 36 by 30, just so we have plenty of room to park and then, you know, have a workbench or something in front of it.
And what are the dimensions of the existing garage?
20 by 35.
And your cars are just too big to fit in there?
My truck's 22 and my wife's car is exactly 20. So, and when you, it's so narrow when you can't really even open your doors in it.
Have you done any kind of engineering study on whether there would be feasible to do it parallel to the existing garage? Turn it 90 degrees, in other words, and not have this problem because,
Oh, you mean extend the garage out?
no, well, no, I mean, take that structure you're proposing and turn it 90 degrees so it extends the existing garage. You say there's some ledge there, but I guess I'm questioning,
So the
is
reason
that an obstacle? Has it been studied to be an obstacle? Has any,
So a couple things. So here, our septic is here. It's actually probably more this way, but this is also a hill here. So if we put it anywhere else, if we shift it any further this way, we have no.
that's not what I mean.
Okay.
Shifting it 90 degrees towards where you're indicating ledge, there.
Well, yeah, the same thing. Then we would have, this all gets ripped out.
Not back there.
You're saying right here, well, that would put it, you know, back in here, right?
I don't know. I mean, I'm asking you if you've done any studies to see if that's feasible, because that would eliminate the problem. You're creating the problem by asking to place it there, and I'm asking, is there an alternative placement for that garage that would alleviate the problem?
I mean, I guess the short answer is no. I mean, we've looked at
When they're
this
done.
several different ways, and we had an architect, engineer at the property looking at this, and this is really the only place that's feasible to.
Okay, well, that was my question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I gave you a roundabout answer there. Sorry about that.
Did you have a comment?
I wanted her to zoom in on this overhead picture, when I didn't want to interrupt their conversation.
It's the aerial photo that you wanted to see, right?
Yeah.
And were you here a few years ago for a variance to allow the
For the,
pavement?
for the driveway setback, yes, ma'am.
Is that zoomed in enough?
Probably the best you can do, huh?
Gets blurry, but I can try
Yeah.
to zoom in a little bit more. Were you trying to zoom in like behind, like over here?
Yeah, I mean, you can see it's all trees to the side of it from the garage, but I'm just not seeing,
I know it's hard to see from the aerial, the pitch to it, but from,
well, I guess my curiosity is the garage itself that's there. I see that the pitch of the roof would make it awkward. Is it a finished space above the garage, or is it just storage?
we'd like to finish it to make just a spare bedroom or something out of it.
Have you thought about just dormering it and then only having to come out like 5 feet to make the current garage deeper instead of having to add an entire new structure?
I mean, in terms of feasibility, we did look at that as an option, but you're redoing the foundation here, because the foundation is built to support the load here, so you have to remove that foundation, extend this out, pretty much rip this roof off, this wall, these walls, all the siding has to come off, you would extend it out, and at that point, from a cost perspective, you're spending a lot of money and not gaining, it still doesn't solve the problem on the width, but we did look at that as an option. By coming off like this, like this, it gives us plenty of room. This might, at some point, we might end up making this living space. Right now, it's just storage space, but that gives us some options there as well. But, here the slope, it pitches up from here up to this is probably 4 feet. And there's definitely ledge here because I have put irrigation in to try to keep our lawn from dying, because there's just that much over ledge.
Okay, and so you're,
Irrigation, actually all the way, pretty much the whole back, we put in irrigation to keep the lawn alive.
and so you're saying also, looking at the garage, there's no ability to make it wider by just adding another 5 or 6 feet to it, say, going out?
Oh, sure.
the back?
I mean, we could extend this, but I still can't drive in it.
Well, you'd have to restructure the face of it
Right.
to change I had to actually do that to mine. I had to restructure the whole front of my garage.
Yeah, we'd be pretty much rebuilding this, and this being a hip roof, the gentleman that looked at it, that becomes a very complicated scenario that probably just wouldn't be worth doing.
While you're there, you said the city of Concord is your neighbor,
Yes, sir, this
that
line
whole
here.
section right there?
Yes, sir.
Is that considered conservation land?
It is, and there's something in your staff memo about that. I can,
Did I miss that?
maybe, I can, just have it, hold on,
What do I do with it?
Let's finish with the testimony.
Yeah, sure,
when you get there.
yeah.
Any further questions from members of the board? Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I mean, the only thing I'd say is, I mean, we've been here 11 years now. This is where we would like to stay. That's where we'd like, stay until the end of time. And like I said, I mean, we park there now. I mean, the vehicles are there. I'd like to be able to put a roof over them, so at some point, when the red's gone and the gray's there, and I don't have to scrape snow off the cars, every winter, hers and mine. And I know it may not seem like much, but it just, we have that space. We'd like to be able to use it, and it doesn't harm anybody. It's, I guess that's all I really have.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Let me step down.
Oh, thank you.
Is there anyone who'd like to be heard in favor of this repeal? Please come on up. Just tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I swear.
Please have a seat.
I'm Jean Richards. We are abutters.
In what sense? Whereabouts are you in relationship to that house?
Most of the land behind it.
So you're, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
What would you like us to know?
We have no problem with this variance at all. Most of the land that he's encroaching, but not really, is our land, and it's treed, and our land's in current use, and it's forest. And we won't be putting anything back there. The only thing we might be doing is cutting down some of the trees, and we have a good neighborly relation. I'm not worried about that at all. I also know that Jason's concerned about the conservation land, as we are, and so it's nice to have somebody there who's watching it like we're watching it, so we want this to work out for him so he can stay there.
Any questions of Ms. Richards? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard in favor of the appeal? Is there anyone else who would like to speak against the appeal? Comments from code enforcement?
Yeah, a couple of things. I did turn the contours on. They're hard to see with the aerial photo, so I'm gonna turn them off. So those are 2-foot contours, just so you get a sense of the
Thank you.
relief
Yeah.
that's there, and, because you were kind of asking that question.
Yeah.
In terms of the conservation land, I did give you an excerpt in your staff memo from the April 12th, 2023 minutes of their meeting, where they were concerned about this garage because of some previous activities that actually encroached upon the conservation land, and I did provide you a photo in your memo. It's probably double-sided paper.
Oh, okay, that's
Yep,
what,
right there.
okay, gotcha.
So there's a photo in your memo that was provided to me by the Conservation Commission of some previous encroachments, so the Conservation Commission is concerned about that. Other than that, I don't have anything to add. I just wanted to make you aware of their meeting discussion and just to clarify the contours for you.
Okay.
Thank you. And with that, I'll declare the meeting closed.
Oh, Did you have something further to add?
I don't know if it was possible to just explain real quick, because I did see that memo.
I'm sorry, yes, I should recognize you again. Please step up, yeah.
So I did see that, that came back, and that photo just, was from 2019. And I think you remembered me, yeah, so that was, I had filled in a couple spots with some loam, and I had a landscape trailer that was over the line by a few feet, and that was discussed back in 2019, and I can promise you from that day forward, I know that line like the back of my hand, so nothing has or ever will be over that line again, I can assure you. So I appreciate the concern, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware that was from 3 or 4 years ago. And I moved it immediately once it was brought to my attention.
And here it says there was a suggestion to put up a fence. Did you put up a fence?
No, because I actually got the variance to mow part of that property up to 50 feet up to, there's a small wetland that goes through the middle of the field, so I was given permission to kind of maintain that area. The fence was really, I think, to prevent any further encroachments, but like I said, that's a non-issue for us. We know where the line is. Last thing I want to do is to get us into trouble with anybody, so.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
With that, any discussion? Start with you.
I don't know.
Do you want me to start? Okay. I don't like it because I don't think it's necessary, because there is an existing 3-car garage. But that's not the test. And I think it meets the variance criteria. I think that it will not be contrary to the public interest or the spirit of the ordinance, because it is consistent with the neighborhood. I drive that road every day, and there's plenty of big 3-car garages there. It's not going to diminish surrounding property values, because the 2 properties closest to it are either conservation property owned by the city or property that's in current use from an abutter who has no objections. I don't think there's any gain to the public, really, from denying the variance that wouldn't be outweighed by a harm to the applicant. I think the property is unique in its slopingness and the location of the house, already pretty close to the property line, and it's a narrow but big piece of property. I think the purposes of the setback requirements are still met, even with the variance being granted, and a garage is a reasonable use in conjunction with a single-family home. So I would grudgingly move to grant it.
Second that. Agree with all those comments.
I'm kind of along the same lines. My preference would have been to just make that garage bigger.
Yeah.
My concern would not necessarily be the current owners. My concern would be the future use and encroachment onto the conservation land.
Yep.
But I would approve, I would follow suit. I think that, because I would follow suit. It's the same thing. It just,
Yeah.
you would think just making the current garage bigger would be the easier way to go without having to continue to encroach closer to the
Right.
conservation land.
And I don't disagree. So we have a motion before us that was already seconded. So all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Motion carries 4-1, 4-0. And with that, I'll gladly relinquish chairmanship of this committee.
You're all set. Thank you.
You're welcome. Keeping us on our toes tonight.
Thank you, Nick. You should see a prorated bump in your paycheck.
Of 0.
The next case is 0054-2023, 13 Washington Street, RD Downtown Residential District. Jeffrey Travato and Gabrielle DiRenzo owners. The owners wish to create a dwelling unit in the existing garage on the property alongside the existing two-family dwelling. A variance is requested from Article 2824H, multiple principal uses on a single lot. Article 2841H, Table of Dimensional Regulations, to allow the reconstruction of a non-conforming building within 1 foot of the side setback where 10 feet is required, and 1 foot of the rear setback where 20 feet is required. The Article 2841H, Table of Dimensional Regulations, to allow expansion of use of the lot with insufficient street frontage. The lot has 69 plus or minus feet of frontage where 75 feet is required. Are Mr. Travato or Ms. DiRenzo here this evening? Please come forward. Swear to tell the truth and nothing but.
Yes.
Would you identify yourselves for the record as you testify, please?
Yes, I'm Jeff Travato, and
I'm Gabrielle DiRenzo.
ready?
What would you like us to know?
So there's an existing barn that I would say is lightly framed, if you will, and it is a very characteristic building for the neighborhood. We have given careful consideration to the character of the neighborhood and the spirit of the ordinance and the opinions of our neighbors before coming to you guys. And we would like to turn this into a dwelling unit to, 1, improve our property, and 2, support the growing population of the city and the state in general. We are aware of the work that this is going to take. I have the privilege of being a part of a building design company. I've leaned on my colleagues and our peers outside of the office to conduct feasibility studies. And we're excited about this opportunity. It's a creative way to generate more housing, and we're excited to get some actual usage out of the barn, which is otherwise only useful for light storage.
Very good. Can you talk a little bit about the hardship issue?
Yes. The hardship is that we are burdened by the fact that this is an original building constructed before the ordinance was written. It's detached from the house, which is kind of the crux of the variance. If this barn happened to be attached to the house, as one of our neighbors' houses is, we wouldn't require a variance at all. Multifamily is a permitted use on this, in the zone. So from my perspective, this is paying closer attention to the spirit of the ordinance by trying to preserve an existing building. But the fact that it's existing and it's very close to the property lines and happens to be detached is where the hardship is. Otherwise, there's no financial incentive for us to improve this building without the rental income.
Questions from the board? Nick, anything? Brenda?
The lot size? Trying to find it on here.
What is the size of your lot?
It is 0.19 acres, if that's helpful, I think.
The staff memo says it's 8276 square feet. 11,250 would be required for the current two-family, and 25,000 square feet would be the minimum lot size for 3 units.
And having personally gone through the process of changing a two-family to a three-family, there's 6 parking space requirement
There are.
as well.
Yep.
Do we have the ability to show 6 parking spaces?
Yes.
There's the ability to park 6 cars. I don't have the exact dimensions of the parking area. on hand.
One of them being handicapped, so it has to have an extra 5 feet.
Doesn't
It
have
doesn't?
to be.
Oh, my.
Because the existing is a two-family, right?
Correct.
Existing, so a two-family and a single-family
Oh, gotcha,
are
gotcha.
exempt from
Gotcha.
that requirement.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Can tell I had to learn mine inside and out.
Thanks for your experience.
Any questions, Brenda, other than that?
We just, no,
Okay, well, you can come back later.
thank you.
Any questions? Ted?
I'm all set.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, if I may add, Tracy, I'm not sure if you got John Chorlian's letter.
I did, and I gave it to the chair, so that'll
Great.
be addressed when they talk about
Thanks.
the,
Thank you.
Thank you, zoning board members.
You're welcome. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard in favor of this appeal? Is there anyone who'd like to be heard in opposition to it? The record will show that there was no testimony either in favor or in opposition. Any comments from code enforcement?
nope.
With that, we'll declare the public testimony portion of the hearing closed. We have a request for a variance. We heard testimony that the hardship is based on the existing lots configuration. It's predating the zoning ordinance and the fact that there is a building on it already, which they would like to convert to a house, but would remain in any case. Start at Mr. Warner's end of this grand array of people here.
Well, a couple things. In terms of lot size compared to other lot sizes in the neighborhood, it appears that this is probably a little bit larger than most other lots in the neighborhood. The neighborhood characteristics are such that there's many multi-dwelling housing in that area, and while this would be a multi-dwelling situation, although by one being separate, I think it would fit with the characteristic of the neighborhood.
Can I ask you to pause, Nick? I did neglect to do something here. I have the letter from John Chorley, that's in the record, but it's not.
It's in the record because it came to me right before the meeting, so I didn't have time to scan it. The
Okay,
other two emails you have are scanned into the record already.
okay. I will just summarize it so that anyone in the room who's interested can know what was in it. This is Jonathan Chorley, 80 School Street in Concord. He's writing concerning the case. He does not live in the immediate neighborhood, but he does have the First Congregational Church campus diagonally across Washington Street from 13 Washington Street under agreement, and is intending to redevelop the existing building into market-rate multifamily dwelling project. Accordingly, he's very interested in the status of this neighborhood and proposed changes there. From the perspective of a soon-to-be neighbor, I consider Mr. Travato's proposed project to be a benefit to the neighborhood and my proposed development. And from the perspective of a resident of Concord generally, I consider Mr. Travato's proposed project to be just the sort of project which is important to addressing the lack of available housing in Concord. From that perspective, I hope that others who own property in Concord will look at Mr. Travato's effort as a roadmap for them to consider similar opportunities. As I'm sure the chair is aware, I never want to make that assumption, the proposed new zoning ordinance encourages infill projects just like this. But he's referring to an ordinance that has been proposed but is not yet in effect. I apologize, Nick, did you have more to add on
There's a
that?
couple other letters too, I think.
There are a couple of emails.
Ooh, did I miss the emails?
They should have been in front of you when you, I can bring you copies.
Hang on.
Yep, they're right behind me.
There you go.
Nancy Hendricks, I'm Jeff Travato's and Gabriel Dorenzo's neighbor. My property overlooks their property located at 13 Washington Street, and I'm writing in support. I lived and owned the property in Concord for nearly 35 years, much of that time in the affected neighborhood. The renovation, as I understand it, will be in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. Most importantly, the project will generate desperately needed fair market housing. Ryan Hivizda, To whom it may concern, we're neighbors of Jeff Travato and Gabriel Dorenzo. We're writing in support of their proposed barn renovation. The project will maintain the character of the neighborhood, improve the appearances of the original building, and stay within the spirit of the zoning ordinance and generate fair market housing for our growing population. And I think that covers all
Yes.
of the correspondence. And those letters and emails are in the record, should anyone care to see them. Now, Nick, I do apologize for my bad manners and my bad management, but nevertheless, it's your turn.
No, but my comments stand as stated.
Okay.
I have nothing further to add.
Okay, thank you. Brenda?
I'm hesitant on the hardship, but that's, being a newer member to the zoning board, that's still the part I'm struggling with anyway, so, but
Okay.
that's really all I can add at this point.
Laura?
I don't have any issue with the reconstruction of the non-conforming building where it is, or with the frontage issue. I too am struggling with the hardship to allow a separate single-family home on this lot. There's nothing about the lot that makes it differently burdened than any other lot in the area. I mean, it does have a separate structure, but it's not like that structure has traditionally been used for housing. So I think I would be inclined to grant variances 1 and 3, I mean 2 and 3, but not 1.
Ted?
I'm not sure what the benefit of that would be, but I do think that there's a hardship here because I think that I agree with the argument that the configuration of the buildings is more restrictive and that's what creates the hardship.
I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Evans and Mr. Wallner. I think that the configuration of the lot and the presence of the building, particularly the fact that they predate the ordinance, does create a configuration that makes the lot peculiar, unique, if you like, and that it does create a hardship that wouldn't exist if there were a connection between the two buildings, or prevents them from doing something that wouldn't exist if there were a connection between the two buildings, which seems to me an incidental thing. So I would be inclined to grant all 3 variances.
I'll move approval on all 3.
Is there a second?
And I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm in favor of 2 of the 3.
Okay. Which 2?
Number 2 and number 3.
Okay. So we have a unanimous vote on number 2 and number 3. And would you like to register a dissent on number 1?
Yes, a nay.
All right, we'll put that in the record. But the variances are granted. The motion carries. You're all set. The next case this evening is 0060-2023. I do have that right in order, I think. Okay, 0060-2023, 10 Drew Street, RS, Single Family Residential District, Georgia Carathanasis, I do apologize for stumbling over your name, owner. The owner wishes to convert a portion of a single-family dwelling to a studio apartment, creating a 2-family dwelling. The applicant seeks the following variances. Article 28.2.4, Table of Principal Uses, to allow use A2, 2-family dwelling. Article 28.5-2, to allow a 2-family dwelling with 125 feet of frontage where 150 feet are required, and 12,500 square feet of lot area where 18,750 square feet are required. Article 28.7.2E, Table of Off-Street Parking Requirements, to allow 2 spaces where 4 are required. I would like to ask Dr. Hutton to fill us in on a couple of relevant details here.
Okay, so you have a new plan in front of you this evening that came in today. Based on the original plan that was submitted with the application, this was noticed as a variance for a second dwelling unit. Based on the newest plans, this would have qualified for a special exception. So as you kind of consider your deliberations, you know, there are different options here that could have been applied for had the original plans been accurate. And the base of the drawing that was presented today is with assistance from the assessing department.
So my understanding is that, given the drawing that they've submitted, if that is in fact their application, they don't need a variance.
Correct.
They need a special exception.
Correct.
And since a special exception is a lesser form of relief than a variance, is it the board's practice, I don't know, to allow them to proceed with a special exception application tonight, or would you make them reapply for that?
Staff had suggested they needed to reapply.
Reapply?
So it's noticed properly.
Okay.
Correct.
Very good. Right.
And
Would-
was that option
The
made known?
reapplication was discussed with the applicant, yes.
Is there anyone here from 10 Drew Street? Please come forward. Notice how adroitly I avoided mispronouncing your name again. Would you promise to tell the truth and nothing but?
Yes.
Would you give us your name as you testify, please?
All right, my name is Georgia Karathanasis.
And what would you like us to know?
Thank you for taking the time to meet with me tonight. The front of my home was zoned for a business a couple of years ago, so I opened my own salon. It was at the very beginning of COVID. Things took a turn for the worse, so I did lose a lot of clients. They didn't want to come, to the salon for obvious reasons. And unfortunately, I ended up closing the salon. I did want to rent it out after I did close, but unfortunately, it did not work out for me. My current job is serving the elderly, and I do enjoy it, but it doesn't pay a lot. There would be no changes made on the outside, only on the inside. It would just need a little kitchenette and a bathtub. I would have a third parking space, as I would want to make it a studio apartment for just one person, so there would be an extra space. There wouldn't be, a lot of traffic, so that wouldn't be an issue at all. And there would be no change to the number of people living there. It's just my boyfriend and I, and my daughter just moved out, so it would just be 3 people again, so that would be no change. Yeah, the apartments here are pretty scarce and unreasonably priced, so I think I could provide reasonably priced housing. Yeah, it would give somebody that opportunity, and it would help me hopefully keep my home. Yeah, and I have a coworker who serves the elderly as well that would be interested, and she's very older and responsible, so. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Questions from the board? Yes, please.
Is there a reason you're choosing to proceed with the variance instead of just applying for the special exception?
I already paid for it, so I figured I'd come in and speak to you about it, and then if not, I would apply for the special variance. So that's my reasoning.
Can we just see the neighborhood?
Yep.
Any other questions from the board? Ted, do you have any questions?
No.
Brenda? Nick? No. Is there anything else you'd like us to know?
I think that's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who would like to be heard in favor of this appeal? Is there anyone who would like to be heard in opposition to it? Any comment from code enforcement other than the comments we've already heard?
Nope.
Can I ask Dr. Hutton a question? If it is an ADU, if they come in for the special exception, would they still need 4 parking spaces?
Very good.
Can I ask you, why would we need 4 when there would be only 3 living there?
that's what the ordinance requires.
Okay, all right.
It is subject to appeal. but-
Okay.
Through the zoning board, but that is just the way they wrote the rules. For which we take no responsibility whatsoever. Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think no one was stepped forward to be heard in favor or in opposition, I believe, and we have the code enforcement comments, which means we are at the end of the public testimony portion of our hearing. And I'm going to start this time with Ms. Spector Morgan. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
So I'm feeling a little bit like a broken record tonight, but I don't think there's any unnecessary hardship here for the use variance because they can construct an ADU that would presumably be entitled to a special exception. So I would be inclined to say no to variances 1 and 2. And as for the parking, again, I don't know why there couldn't be 4 spaces on the lot. So I guess I'm inclined to deny all the requested variances.
Yeah, sure. It's irregular, but go ahead.
I was just gonna say to the parking space situation, my parking is very, very narrow, and I made a space on the side, so that's why it's just super narrow. I would have to widen my whole driveway.
Okay, thank you. Brenda?
If we said no to the variance, would she still be able to come in for the special acceptance? for
Yes.
ADU?
Yes, I have that on good authority from the professional on my left. That professional, not these two.
And does it really change a lot about what she would submit? I mean, is she pretty much submitting the same thing, but just under the different category?
The arguments are different. So that part of the submission would be different. The physical plan could be the same.
So I guess for me, I'm just inclined to approve it, to not put her through that double process.
Understood. Nick, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, Brenda has a point. It was already a multi-use building beforehand,
With the board's approval.
with the board's approval.
Sorry.
Certainly, the studio apartment is less intense in terms of usage and traffic and so forth. Yeah, and I looked at the criteria for a special exception. I can't see anything in the criteria, a special exception that would be an issue. Do we want to make the applicant go through the process again, having to deal with less restrictive requirements? So I'm in a quandary on that.
I have a question for Dr. Hutton. In the event that we were looking at a special exception for an ADU, does the parking issue go away?
I don't believe it does. You still have to provide parking for the units.
So,
We would need to act on the parking variance regardless.
Right. But I just want to remind the board that a variance for a second dwelling unit runs with the land, not necessarily the applicant, just as a little reminder.
yep, point well taken always.
So an ADU, correct?
Yes, but ADUs have different restrictions on them that don't exist for the variance. Sorry.
My reaction to this is in 2 parts. One, I'm reluctant to vote for variances when variances aren't needed, because it means I need to find facts that don't need to be true in order to do it. And it's not noticed as a special exception, it's noticed as a variance, and I'm not sure I see the variance issues being resolved, with the exception of the parking, which I would be willing to address. I understand the inconvenience and expense visited upon the appellant, but that isn't a situation that we created, and it's not one that I think we should create potential confusion by attempting to remedy. So my inclination would be to vote in favor of a motion to grant the parking variance, because I think the parking variances are justified.
Can I interject just?
Mhm.
So if she has actually created the additional space that wasn't on her plans that she just stated, then she doesn't need the parking variance.
She
Because
doesn't.
you only need 3 for the ADU, not 4.
Okay.
But I don't know where that additional space is. Just-
Okay.
I just wanted to correct myself. That's all.
Well, what we could do with this, then, is we could table the, which one is it now?
Parking
Number-
variance, number
yeah,
3.
Number 3, yes, excuse me. Number 3, I was reading the wrong case, that's always helpful. Number 3, and that would give us the option of revisiting if we ever need to, and we could act on the first 2, which would be in my comfort zone. I don't know how the rest of the board feels about it.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
Well, we haven't heard from Ted yet.
In a few words.
Sounds like a what about Bob moment.
I kind of agree with the chair's opinion that we should be granting the minimum, not the maximum in this case. And I think the minimum would be the ADU, which we don't really have before us, so we can't really act on that. So I would move disapproval of numbers 1 and 2 at least.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I think we should probably have a conversation about the variance criteria. I think that the variance criteria that I find to be not met is the unnecessary hardship one, primarily because a compliant ADU can be constructed.
Fair enough. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The vote, you're a nay? Okay. The vote is 4-1, and the variances 1 and 2 are denied. Do I hear a motion to table variance 3?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to table the variance. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? The vote is unanimous.
Are we tabling to a time and date specific?
Well, we tabled rather than recessed, but,
We should table to a time, to the next meeting.
all right.
Yes.
Can we make sure she understands?
Yes, I will.
So let's just, July 12th at 6 PM?
Okay.
The regular July meeting, we'll leave the actual date
Okay.
a little more open because we may not have a quorum on the 12th.
There's something to talk about.
The regular July meeting.
Yeah.
As noted.
July's going to be a hot topic after the rest of this agenda. Very good.
Does she understand what's going
I'm going to come back to that. So, what we've done is we have said that the variance for the first 2 variances, which were for the use and the 2-family dwelling with 125 feet of frontage, are denied because you don't really need them. And if you don't really need them, then one of the criteria for a variance is not met effectively, which is what Inspector Morgan was saying. We've tabled the parking issue. You could make a change in the arrangement of parking that you propose and make that go away, as I understand it. But even if you choose not to and would like to request a variance, you need to give us a drawing that shows us precisely what it is you're proposing to do. We can then take that question back off the table and act on it. How we'll act on it, I can't tell you at this point, but we'll either deny or approve. So that's where things stand. So I regret that you have to make 2 trips through the turnstile on the application process, but I'm afraid there's no way around that if we want to keep things according to Hoyle here. Understand?
So I need to get a special exception?
You need to get a special exception. Dr. Hutt will explain to you what the details of that are. The criteria are a little different. and they're actually less stringent than those for a variance, because the ordinance, you're not asking for forgiveness from the ordinance, you're just asking for a little special approval for something that is allowed under the ordinance.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That, I assume I didn't say anything too misleading or yellow spoken of. The next case, which is last on the agenda this evening, is 0061-2023, 61 Borough Road, Pennacook, RM, Medium Density Residential District, Kalapa Realty Trust owner. The owner wishes to construct 22-story dwelling units within 30 feet of the property line, where Article 2845D5 requires 50 feet of perimeter buffer. Is there someone from Kalapa Realty Trust here, please? Please come forward. Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please have a seat and give us your name for the record.
All right. My name's Eric Jones, and I'm not the owner. I'm the owner's representative. I plan to build the structure, build the project out. So I would be the builder and the developer.
I understand. Could you explain to us why you feel the variance is justified in this case?
Yes, the previously approved plan, as far as I understand, back in 2018, was a single story, and kind of in keeping with that single story aesthetic, we designed and submitted a plan for a 2-story, but with the second floor completely under the cover of roof, with the exception of some dormers. So aesthetically, it appears the same. The setback requirement of a 2-story for 50 feet in this zone for a multifamily, I guess it was unclear to me as to exactly what the criteria was for a 2-story versus a 1-story if it appears as a 2-story. Obviously, it did meet the criteria as a 2-story. So kind of did our best to stay within the parameters of the original plan approval unknowingly. I don't know that
So sorry.
It's okay, they're big plants.
the existing, well, I'm sure if you see on the cover page in the upper left corner, there's, you know, the typical requirements of the previously approved plan stated, and maximum height, building height of a 1-story structure at, let's see, I'm trying to put my mouse here, I left my mouse at my chair. So the building height, maximum height of 35 feet, and I believe we're at 27 feet. And I think originally when it was clear cut, there was a less of a vegetation buffer around the perimeter, which since it's been sitting for quite some time has grown up substantially, and so I believe we can maintain that buffer. And from a density perspective, we're only talking 18, actually, if you include the existing 3-family, which is out front toward the road on the other page. Yep, there it is. It's 21 units total, 18 new units, 3 existing. Whereas the density for this would permit for 67 units, so we're well under the density of this zone and this use. But the biggest kicker is the shape of the lot. If the lot was rectangular and we had all the area that we have in the triangular shape, we wouldn't be here. We'd have a 50-foot buffer, and going from a 1-story to a 2-story wouldn't be an issue. But it's really the triangular shape of the lot is kind of the hardship, I guess, if you could say.
And the PSNH easement takes a chunk out of it too, doesn't it?
It does. Yep.
Am I correct that this drawing A2 is not what you're asking for now?
Correct, that is
That was what you had before?
the previous, yes, and that wasn't us. That was the previous owner.
Okay, so that's not what we're discussing tonight.
It's only a reference point.
I see.
Yep.
Okay.
Are there pictures of what you actually are proposing?
Yep. I don't know how to navigate what,
I got it.
okay, thank you.
It's these, right, Eric?
Yeah,
That's it, yep.
that's what you are asking for.
Yeah, so that's a 2-unit, let's see. Is that? If you scroll, there might be is there a 4-unit? Yeah, there you go. There might, I think if you keep going, there's an elevation of the 4-unit. Maybe not.
Nope, just the,
Okay, well, basically the 4-unit is two, so in the site plan, there's 4-unit structures and 1 2-unit structure. And the 4 units are basically 2 of those stacked side by side. So that would be a representation of the 2-unit structure at the end of the cul-de-sac, deep in. So as far as the dormer configuration and the roof heights, it's applicable.
I was just gonna ask, I'm sure I could figure this out from the plans, but is this higher than the 1-story ones?
That's a good question. I don't have, I spoke to the architect who did the previous 1-story, and he never got it past a pretty picture.
Okay.
So I don't feel comfortable scaling off of it with my software.
And how tall will these be though?
These are, I believe, 27 feet, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
To what, to the peak?
To the ridge, yes.
Okay.
Do you have a rough idea of how tall the vegetation in the buffer is now?
It's hard for me to know, just because of the way the vegetation is kind of bunched together, which vegetation is on our property at the top of the vegetation versus what's on the adjacent property. But my guess is that it's both, the existing vegetation is above the top of our
The top of
structures.
the roof line?
Yeah.
The back side of the buildings, just for clarification, because I think the picture that we saw was the front side of the building. The back side of the buildings that's facing the neighboring street,
Yes.
are there a lot of windows on that side? 'Cause I'm guessing that's probably why some of the neighbors are here.
There's not there's 2 in the 2nd story dormer, shed dormer facing back, and then on the 1st floor, you've got there's the double window and then the slider for each unit.
The slider being on lower level,
Yes.
that's not an issue.
Dr. Hutton, can you go back to the overhead?
The aerial photo?
Yeah.
There you go.
So the property next to it that seems to have a funny property line, yes. Who is that owned by?
I should know that.
Funny
Primrose
property line.
Woods LLC, Phase 2.
Okay. And are there plans for phase 2?
I have no idea.
It's common land?
Oh, it's, okay, for Primrose, okay,
For a cluster subdivision? Yeah.
okay.
Where the two-family is, you've got a couple little, like, street jut-outs.
The 3-family, the existing?
The two-family in the back?
Oh, in the back,
Or the
yep.
2-unit in the back?
Yep.
Is that just for, like, turnaround purposes, or?
That's basically a driveway because there is not enough depth for a driveway in front of the garage.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of like you
Gotcha.
could call it parking, but not additional parking.
Yeah, I just didn't know if there was, like, land that was maybe future potential development later.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware of.
Other questions from the board? Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Is there anyone who wishes to be heard in favor of this appeal? Is there anyone who wishes to be heard in opposition to it?
One at a time.
Yeah. Could we just have you come up?
have them sit in the front.
Okay. They can sit anywhere they like. If we could just have one testimony at a time, that would be helpful. Swear to tell the truth and nothing but.
Nothing but the truth.
May we have your name for the record?
I'm Anthony Punton. I live at 86 Primrose Lane. I was noticed because of the common area. These are friends and neighbors. Full disclosure, I'm an engineer, so that's why they wrangled me. We took a look at the plans. As you can imagine, the biggest concern with Mike and Julie, Jason, and Kevin and Debbie, they abut the property on the plan south, which is the western property line. There's a 30-foot buffer there, and I can answer that there is a distinct line between the established vegetation and the vegetation that's growing back. It was clear cut a couple years ago right to the property line. There's a pretty distinct hedgerow on Jason, Mike's, and Debbie's property, and it's cleared right up to it. So you asked the growth, if it's 4 or 5 years, I don't know, chest high in there. One of the questions, I had some questions about the plans. I understand that there's a 30-foot setback. As somebody noted, on the east side is common land, never going to be developed. On the south side, common land, never going to be developed, and there's 30-foot buffers on there. Seems that there could be the possibility of an asymmetrical setback, keep the 50 on the west side. There's two, if you go to the design plans, please.
Yep.
Dr. Hutton, there is two 24-foot roadways separated. 24-foot is a big road, and I know they have the island in between, and they're going to have stormwater treatment in there. But to gather a little bit of more land there to move the parcel to the development to the proper offset, little to the east, doesn't seem like it's a big deal. Even if you had to steal some of the 30-foot buffer and go that way, it's never going to be developed. Nobody's there. So if we're going to keep something, one of the questions we had is the 2 4-units. I know that they're not shown in the elevation view. It's a double of the 2-unit, as the gentleman said. They show a slider there and railing. So we assume that there's a slider and a patio. These plan views don't show any jut out or any patio, if you will, into. I assume that they're going right from the back, and I don't know if that patio and railing was intended to be in the buffer, the 30-foot or 50-foot, or even if it's allowed to be. There is a plan in there that talks about limit of disturbance where they have a heavy dashed line. Again, I'm only focusing on the western parcel, western property line.
You can go up there and show us if you want.
Oh, it's not there. If you go, but anyhow, so right in here, this is right on the back of the property line like it should be, or the step back line. If you go to the elevation view, they show patios with railings, and those patios and railings are not shown on the plan view. So do they encroach upon that setback? Whether it's 30 or 50, I don't know if it's allowed, if it's a ground level patio versus a structure. I'm not sure what the exact allowance is in a setback. There is a landscape plan or erosion control plan in that plan set that has a squiggly line right here about 15 feet off. It says limit of disturbance. There is a sewer line that's going to have to come in there, so that probably is the physical limit of disturbance. But is that the forever limit of disturbance? Are they going to let this property owner mow and have a lawn all the way back to the property line? So some of these are the questions that we have, because you do have, somebody mentioned the second-story windows. I forgot who it was. You got 1, 2 second-story windows, Mike and Julie, and then you got Jason's down there close to that. So those are some of the questions we have. It just didn't seem to be fully developed in such a way. I would hope they would know how high the buildings are at this stage. And, if you walk it out there, you'll see that the vegetation is clear to the property line. I'm not here to judge anybody. I didn't hear one thing about a hardship. I heard well, they had 30-foot last time, and we're building off those plans. Plans change. If it's 50, it's 50. I didn't hear a hardship. Nobody said, we're going to take the project away if we have 50. Right? We all recognize housing, especially in our neighborhood, 55 over housing. That's great. Right to the schools, no kids. I'll say it. More people, the better. that we have. Services all consolidated. So, I mean, I don't want to question the project as much as some of those items, especially a patio, a backyard being right up to the property line. And I don't think you have the answers. Those are questions I have, so.
Right. The appellant will have the opportunity to clarify. Any other questions for Mr. Punt?
Did I miss anything?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard? Please come forward. You bet.
So when we purchased,
We need you to come up and be sworn in and say who you are.
Michael Wright.
You swear to tell the truth?
I do.
Mr. Wright, what would you like us to know?
So my wife and I bought the property, 78 Primrose, which is
Go up there and show us, yep.
It's facing the first set of 4.
this property here, which has the easement for the underground utilities. And when we purchased this property from Ron Richter, the previous owner of this project, we were told that there would be a 50-foot setback. And we made, in that they were gonna clear that piece of property to run the utility, and they were gonna, make it look aesthetically pleasing to us. Ron had all the clearing done, and then nothing's happened, so it's grown up and it looks terrible at the moment. And we made the decision to purchase the house based on what we were told was gonna happen back there. And now it's changing, so we feel like that's not appropriate.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to be heard? Please come forward.
Jason Lane, 70 Primrose,
You swear to tell the truth?
100%. We are the last abutting property over in the corner here. That's my name. And yeah, 24 years on the property and making improvements because our backyard is our happy place. We're both public school educators, don't get a lot of vacations, we spend our time in our yard. And we've known, the Ron Richter property, which was before, and the clear cutting. And obviously, we can't oppose the project if it's zoned that way. But Ron worked with us, and we were fairly pleased with all of that. And just don't feel that the 50-foot or that the 30-foot is necessary versus the 50-foot as originally proposed. And also, I do support shortening the setback on the other side, which doesn't affect any property owners. So I think that's my main thing. Ted, nice to see you again. Used to inspect some of my jobs at the house.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard? Swear to tell the truth.
Sure do.
May we have your name, please?
So my name is Jennifer Chase. I own 73 Borough Road, so I actually look out my backyard to the left and I can see the lime trees that separates this property from the next currently. I'm glad to know that it's 55 plus. I don't have children, so this is a really great joy to know that it's not going to be louder in that aspect. I would request that we keep the 50 feet just to keep the privacy. I spent 8 years living downtown Concord, and then spent a year looking for a home before I found this one and bought it because of the neighborhood and the quiet. So having this much development that close really would have changed my opinion on buying the house. Mostly I want to keep the stars at night, so if there's a way to keep the lights so that they're not blinding and giving me that orange glow that I moved away from, I would wonderfully appreciate it.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard? Please come forward. Swear to tell the truth and nothing but.
I do. My name's Debbie McLaughlin. I'm here with my husband and my daughter. We occupy the last spot there that abuts, and we've been owners for probably 25 years of that property. And we're also under the same impressions as the Wrights. We had many conversations with Ron Richter. We've been in this room with Ron Richter before, and we're under the impression it was a 50-foot setback, and don't feel there's an unnecessary hardship to maintaining that for this project. I also want to assure that the property line, which does have the growth that was planted on it by Mr. Hare a few years back, is maintained and not removed with this project. So.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard? Please come forward. Swear to tell the truth.
I
May we have your name, please?
My name's Jeff Lorden. I'm at 47 Borough Road. I'm on the east side of this property, on the other side of the conservation land. But in the fall, when the leaves drop, I can see over the primrose, you know, and so the setback, I'm concerned about that setback also. I realize this project will probably happen, but I'd rather have it 50 feet away from that boundary than the 30 feet. And also, I'm concerned about more traffic on Borough Road, that the corner to the east of this, it's very dangerous. And also, if it's senior community, they're gonna wanna walk, exercise, and use that road, and you take your life in your hands when you walk around that corner.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do.
And last weekend, a lady was driving west, and apparently she was chewing on her McNuggets, and she sideswiped a pickup truck going the other way on that corner. I think the city needs walkways there and improve that section road. There's the Whitaker place just down to the left-hand side, and the elderly walk on that road also. And I didn't have a chance to study any plans before this, but I wonder if there was a traffic study done before this project.
In the case of what we're talking about, that would not hinder our,
It wouldn't be on the yours.
that's something the planning board would address in the event that it needed to be addressed, so we can't help you with that.
All right, well, I'm concerned about the setbacks.
Understood. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard? Please come forward. Swear to tell the truth.
I do.
May we have your name, please?
My name is Amy Miller. Sorry, I get a little nervous. I live at 66 Primrose, so I would be just at the very tip over there at the end. I purchased my home 4 years ago, never knew about this project, unfortunately. And it's heartbreaking to hear that they're gonna stick 20 houses pretty much in our backyard. I have children, I have grandkids that are in my home, and I feel like this is going to affect them in a great way with noise. You know, as this other gentleman said, this is probably gonna happen. As far back as we can keep these variances, you know, from our properties would be great, because this lady said she wants her stars, and that's what we moved out there for. We took our kids out of the city, brought them here, so that they would have a quiet neighborhood. And this is gonna bring so much noise to our area while they're building these houses. 1 to 2 years of bulldozing and banging is what we're gonna incur while this is going on. It's a 55-plus community. The housing market in the state doesn't exist, so that's great for anybody that's gonna move there. But for us existing residents, this is gonna be a lot for us to have to live and listen to for the next several years. So, you know, I'm asking that, you know, if they're gonna do anything and allow this to come in, you know, to please make that property line as far back as we can possibly have it from our residence area.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard? Any comments from code enforcement?
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of factual clarifications. So this was an approved project by the planning board. The approval has since expired, so it's going through the process again. It was approved with 30-foot buffers, so I'm a little confused about the 50-foot, because it was never approved with 50-foot buffers.
How many years ago was that?
More than 2, because it needs to be the ordinance hasn't changed, but because it expired without construction, they need to go back for their approvals. They've already had approval from the architectural design review in terms of the questions about the windows and the patios and all that. That portion of their planning board review has been done. And on the 24-foot road, that is a requirement of the ordinance that it be 24 feet. So that isn't something that they could reduce without a need for an additional variance.
Are they going to be public roads or private roads?
These are gonna be public roads.
Public roads.
As far as I know, and there are walkways throughout and around, the sidewalks are met. Again, they do have hurdles to meet to get their planning board approval the second time around, but, they're in that process and they're trying to, honor the original plan as much as they can, so.
So the question is whether it's a one-story or two-story structure,
Correct.
because of the addition of the dormers and the occupied
The addition of the
space.
dormers requires the
Makes it
extra
a
20
two-story
feet.
space.
Yep.
So I had a few questions for
Mhm.
you. So the original one was for one story.
Mhm.
Now so the original approval was just one stories.
Right, the elevation was very similar. The difference is the addition of the dormers, which creates living space on the second floor, which is what, so the peak isn't changing. They're adding the dormers to add living space up there. And-
Right.
Eric, correct me if
And
I'm
adding
wrong.
windows.
And the windows, so it makes the buffer go from a 30-foot requirement to a 50, which wasn't realized until they were in front of the Architectural Design Review Committee.
In some of the other developments, since I joined the zoning board, there was a buffer height requirement.
There is for this as well.
What's the height on that?
So there's various buffer options that the planning board goes through when they look at this development. In all of the buffers, you can't put buildings, impervious areas, parking, or anything like that in those buffers, and they have to be maintained in a natural state, with a few exceptions of, like, a grassed play, not a play, you're not gonna have a play area here, but I believe there's in the plans, I don't wanna get my developments confused, so I just wanna look real quick.
But there was a height requirement too for
Right, so
the
this,
vegetation.
the garden area would be one of the, and the gardening shed would be things that would be allowed in the buffer, but there's a wetland on that side, so it's outside the wetland buffer anyways.
Mainly, I'm concerned with the one side that they're,
Yep, you can't put impervious areas or clear that buffer, but, and that's those are planning board requirements that the planning board reviews at their level of review.
Okay.
And then the enforcement is, enforcement of planning board conditions is also my office, so it's kind of like two arms to
Yeah.
the same animal.
and then the patios, that was,
If they're impervious, they cannot be in the buffer. So if they're like paver patios, those can't be in the buffer because that's an impervious surface.
so even steps off the sliders to the ground would be within the 30
Well,
feet or
steps
no?
aren't considered impervious, they're an appurtenance to the structure, so the steps would be probably allowed, but not the clearing.
So no decks, no patios, no,
Right, because the structure has to meet the 30-foot buffer.
Very good, thank you.
Well,
Mr. Jones, would you like to offer factual clarification in response to anything you've heard?
The railings that are shown.
can you just
Would you come on up and
yeah, I actually have a.
get you on the
couple
record and we can
questions
ask
of him as well.
questions, so on?
While he's settling in, can I ask you one more question?
Mhm.
So the number of lots that he's looking to do, that
Has not changed.
has not changed, okay.
I think the main thing I'd like to clarify is the railings. We did not contemplate putting decks there. I think the railings wound up in the drawing in haste, so I apologize for that.
Okay, so the railings are just a drafting error?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Could you shift the whole thing 10 feet the other way?
The 10 feet toward the north, or no, toward
Towards the conservation property?
or the east. I can check with the engineer. I don't believe so, the way that, if you see the bottleneck toward the narrow end of the long triangle is 24 feet.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah, I see.
I didn't notice, and maybe it's one of the other papers that I had to put on the floor to get through these, but I don't notice any driveway length. How long are the driveways for each of the units?
I can tell you that right now. Looks to be
About 20 feet.
Yeah, to the curb, some of them are on an angle, it's 20 to 25, I think it's favoring the 25.
Each driveway is 20 to 25 feet?
Yes.
And you need those for the additional parking spot, right? Do you need
The driveways?
Do you need the driveways for parking?
Yes.
In addition to the garage spaces. Is there anything else you'd like us to know?
Just, I don't know what type of lighting, dark sky lighting requirements are present in the ordinance. I should know that. All I know is I always do dark sky lighting, which, is everyone familiar with that term? I don't know, I can explain it, but it's shining the light down. It's a specification of a light.
Thank you.
Yep. And I'm a huge fan of that. And so even if it's not required, we would do that. And I'd be happy to commit to that. As far as sky view, like I said before, I don't believe we're going any higher than what was previously approved. I think we want to be sensitive to that as well. And as far as the windows facing backward, if you look at the floor plan, I'm trying to think if there's anything we could do there that would help mitigate that concern. But they're, just trying to pull it up on my screen.
Can we look at do you have an image of the back of the units?
Yeah, if you scroll up, I believe. Yeah, bottom right-hand corner is the back of the unit.
That's the back of the unit?
Yeah, and those are the railings that
Minus
should.
the railings?
Right.
Now, I don't want to complicate things, but is there any option for the second floor to be large skylights instead of windows that?
That's a good question. By doing, so the previous plan had one-car garages and single-floor living with 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. And by moving the second floor, I call it the guest suite or guest bathroom and bedroom, to the second floor, you still maintain that first floor living, but you gain a 2-car instead of a 1-car garage, which is really important for people aging in place, to maintain their mobility and their social involvement with 2 cars for 2 people. When
Your master bedroom's still on the first floor?
it is.
Yeah.
If you have 2-car garages, do you need that third space per unit to meet any sort of regulation
Third space.
in the driveway?
To have 20 to 25-foot driveways, if you could shorten those, that could help avoid the,
Dr. Hutton has
You
something
can't
to tell me
back
I'm
directly
crazy.
onto a street from a garage.
Okay, thank you.
right, but your average car length,
You
well,
can't
no,
back
trucks
directly
are
onto a
longer,
street.
yeah.
Without an additional variance.
Well,
We don't wanna make work for
I'm
yourself.
thinking of a couple of, so, being in real estate, I'm thinking of a couple of condo developments where the driveways are only 10 to 15 feet long.
Brenda,
Sorry.
we don't get into redesign.
No, I know.
So we really should go
I
easy
know,
on
but I'm looking at the buffer side of it, and, if there were, I don't think we'd have so much opposition to adjusting the buffer and allowing, because it has to be completely reapproved, if it was skylights versus full windows.
I don't think it would meet the building code. Because you need the egress windows, right?
Kennecott, Island.
In Concord, I don't think it meets the building
I
code
think
because you need egress windows.
let's leave the
sorry,
design
apologize.
issues aside.
Okay.
That's really the appellant's job to design the building, not ours. If we conclude that the design is done in such a way that they have not asked for the minimum variance, that's something we can talk about. But rearranging
My
the design is
apologies.
not really in our territory. Other questions from the board? Anything else you'd like us to know?
It kind of speaks to Ms. Perkins' concern. I don't know if I should mention it or not, because we're kind of.
You can mention anything you like.
Okay. Currently, we have the second floor configuration. I don't know if, it's hard to read it up there, but basically, the rear-facing dormer is a bedroom, and the front-facing dormer is a loft or flex space. I could definitely look into flip-flopping that, which would potentially allow us to get rid of the windows and do skylights. I don't know that it's in the best interest of the owner of the unit, which is also a concern of mine, so, just figured I'd mention that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ted, yes.
Could you address the hardship issue? Because the gentleman that spoke earlier had questioned that, so I'd like to get your explanation on that.
This is my first time in front of a board like this, so I'm learning. The hardship is mainly the shape of the lot, and in the spirit of the zoning ordinance for density and setbacks, if you have the space, but to do single-story, my thought, not my thought, but the hardship would be the shape of the lot. It's, if you go from a 30-foot setback to 30-foot setback to a 50-foot setback, being the 30-foot setback having already been approved and would likely be approved again for single-story. Were it not for the shape of the lot, then it wouldn't be an issue, and I guess that's the hardship.
But were it not for the second story, it wouldn't be an issue to either, right?
Agreed, yep, yep.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
With that, we'll declare the public testimony portion of the hearing closed. We have a request for granting a 30-foot buffer where a 50-foot buffer would be required because the building is a two-story structure. If it were a one-story structure, it would be a 30-foot buffer, as it was in the earlier scheme. We heard testimony that the configuration of the lot makes it impossible to put the number of units on it that would otherwise be permitted by the ordinance. And in order to do that, the appellant would like to be allowed to have two-story units. I suppose the number doesn't change, though, does it? No. So, that's what we've heard. Those are the facts. How does it look to you, Ted?
Well, I'm struggling a little bit with the hardship. Not clear how that is impacting this situation. It's been approved for the same number of units, except as single-story, presumably because it was 55 and older, or those of us who have reached that category like to have one story of living space. And now it's going to be a two-story, and that is what's kicking in this variance request, and I'm not sure how I see that as a hardship.
Very good. Ms. Spector-Morgan, how do you see it?
I'm going to sing a completely different song. First, I just want to address some of the concerns of the abutters, which are completely valid. But unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about the representations the seller made to you. Traffic, lighting, noise, those are planning board issues. The density's allowed, the construction's allowed. And we can't redesign the project, but I think the developer has heard your concerns, and I personally am hopeful he would work with you on those. I think the hardship is clear, given the shape of the lot, the wetland setback, the PSNH easement. So that's not where my concern is. My concern is in the other variance criteria, because I think a lesser setback here would alter the essential character of the neighborhood, which is single-family homes. I think a lesser buffer does have the potential to diminish the abutting property values. And I'm not sure what gain there is to the applicant from the reduced buffer, especially where he could have this buffer with one-story units of approximately the same size, versus the harm to the public from granting the variance. So I think there's a hardship. I don't think the other criteria are met.
Brenda?
First, let me apologize, because
No
as I
need,
am
no
new
need.
to the zoning board, I forget my place sometimes with my
So do I.
my
I
real
get in all
estate,
kinds of issues.
my real estate history. And the only reason I said Pentecost was just referring to there are skylights that can be considered egresses. So, but being a 55 and over and being familiar with some 55 and over developments, 8 out of 10, the second floor is used for company. So it's rarely used. Sounds like he was willing to look at options there. I kind of agree on the hardship, mainly because of the PSNH. If that wasn't there,
Yeah.
I think they could very easily tighten that up and at least not need, if you might only have one, maybe 6 units that would need to be. But I am struggling with the second floor change from the first floor change and still wanting only a 30-foot buffer for the sake of the neighbors. And I'll leave the rest of my thoughts because I'm not planning board.
Okay. Nick?
Well, normally I am persuaded by the shape of the lot being a hardship issue, and I think in one way this is a hardship issue. But like Laura, I don't think the 5 criteria are totally met. I think you could redesign this thing to accommodate 50-foot, it wouldn't be pretty, but I think you could accommodate 50-foot buffers and still have the same number of units. So I'm inclined not to support the request.
I don't agree with you that you could redesign it to 50-foot and still have the same number of units. You could still have this number of 1-story units if you left it the way it is. But if they have to pull the whole, they lose 40 feet of width on that lot. They've lost quite a bit, I think. That said, I think we can and have made the argument that the shape of a lot can create a hardship under certain circumstances, and this might be that situation. One thing that I notice when I look at these buildings, I think the reason, the intent of the ordinance here had to do with massing, not whether or not you could see your neighbors. If these were single-family houses in a planned unit development, for example, they could be 2 stories high and 30 feet from the line, and it wouldn't be an issue, to the best of my knowledge. Maybe there's a wider setback there, I don't know. But they're not actually any larger than an ordinary house with a dormer on the top of it. So the nature of the building, the scale is no different than what was originally approved and what the ordinance, I think, contemplated. So I think you could make an argument that it's in keeping with the spirit of the ordinance and it's in keeping with the intent of the ordinance. And I think you could make an argument that there is a hardship created by the lot. However, what I don't see is that by adding the extra square footage on the upper level to these buildings, if we're denying the use of the square footage on the upper level of these buildings, we've denied them of a reasonable use, considering that they can build 1-story units, which would be habitable. My suspicion is they want to do this because they want to get more square footage on the land because it makes a better business proposition, and I can understand that, and I have considerable sympathy for it, but that unfortunately is not a zoning issue. So I think in the end, having said all those interesting things, I would be inclined to vote against a variance because I don't think in this case the hardship deprives them of a reasonable use. Now you could make the counter argument that a 2-story building is a reasonable use, but so is a 1-story building and it's legal.
If, just for clarification for me as a newer zoning board member, if we deny this variance as it was presented, they could still apply for another variance with a different plan or design?
It would have to be substantially and materially different.
Yes, it would have to be quite a bit different. I mean, the board, I can't tell you how different because the board would have to see it and decide, but
Right.
that would be the case. So that's how I come down on it. I don't actually think that all Hades would break loose planning-wise if they were to do this, but I don't see a clear rationale for granting in this case.
Yeah, even just knowing that the slider would end at the buffer and there's no room to even pull a grill outside.
Oh, you could, you have to put it in the grass.
Yeah. Or pull it into the driveway, I guess.
Yes, yeah. Okay, so have we all had our say? I think, yep, we have. Does anyone care to make a motion one way or the other?
I will move to deny the requested setback variance because although I believe there is a hardship, I don't believe, let me take that back. although I believe that there is a unique characteristic of the property, I agree with the chair that that does not deprive them of a reasonable use of the property. I believe this is not consistent with the purpose and in spirit of the ordinance because a smaller setback would alter the essential character of the neighborhood. And we didn't hear any evidence that this would not diminish surrounding property values. And I think that the gain to the public from denying the variance outweighs any potential loss to the applicant, which is still free to develop the property with the exact same density, just in a slightly different configuration.
Is there a second?
Second.
By way, any discussion on the motion? By way of discussion for myself, I intend to vote for the motion. I don't necessarily agree with the notion that it's inconsistent with the intent of the ordinance, but it isn't material for me because for other reasons, I think we haven't met all 5 criteria. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? The vote is unanimous. The variance is denied. And that concludes our regular agenda. A motion to approve the minutes from last week's meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The vote is unanimous. And we have some other business to discuss, Ms.
Calendar for July, yes. On the record.
Now, online it says the 5th, right?
I have not verified that. The calendar, the zoning board calendar says the 12th.
Oh, it does?
It does.
Oh, so I wasn't looking at that. I think I was looking at the city calendar.
So I made a boo-boo and didn't change it on the city calendar.
Pardon?
I must have made a mistake and didn't change it on the city calendar, but on our posted
Okay.
schedule that we have on our webpage.
So the world thinks it's the 12th.
Well, it depends on who you
I've been telling people the 12th, so, you know, there's that.
I'm not concerned. I just want to make sure I had the right date. And so, as I mentioned to you earlier, I'm going to be away on the 12th. I will not be available.
How many people are available on the 5th?
5th I can do.
Okay, the 5th it is.
I have my whole crew coming in from Texas and everything, starting that week of the 12th.
Well, let me just check one thing.
And you didn't invite me over.
It would be a
I
hardship
don't
for
know
me
if
to
you
come
need
in.
me, but I can be available.
No, it's not the minutes,
for
it's
fifth or
the,
Oh,
voting
great.
notices.
Brenda says she could be here the 5th, too.
We got enough time?
I
Well,
mean,
it
I'll
sounds like we
probably
might.
come anyway, because I
That means they have to
keep
go out
learning.
Wednesday.
It sounds like we
to
meet.
know when
might
not
meet
to talk.
They have to go out the 21st.
Tracy?
Yeah, oh, sorry, I'm just making sure we can notice properly.
Brenda can be here on the 5th.
Yes,
So if you got enough time to notice.
that's what we're checking.
And Jim
Okay.
and Andrew probably will be available too. Maybe.
Let's do a joint effort,
Okay.
we'll get it out.
Okay, yes, we can notice for the 5th.
All right, it's going to be the 5th, not the 12th. See you all
Yes.
then. Anything else for tonight?
Nope.
Thank you, everybody.
How many cases? 10?
I have 10 for July.
Motion to
right?
adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.